Hello Ashen Ones out there, I'm Radek. In this mini lore video we are going to explore the story of Havel the Rock and his heritage. Havel the Rock is a secondary character and boss of the first game, probably most known for his armor, famous to be one of the tankiest in the whole franchise. Havel was a bishop of the Way of White and a very close friend of Lord Gwyn. Miracle of Bishop Havel the Rock, cover body in powerful defensive magic coating. Havel the Rock, an old battlefield compatriot of Lord Gwyn, was a sworn enemy of Sif the Scaleless. He despised magic and made certain to devise means of counteraction. Symbols of his bond with Gwyn are his great shield and dragon tooth, which, being described as true divine heirloom, were probably gifted him by the Lord of Sunlight himself. But Havel had also his own followers, a group of warriors wearing his same stone-made armor set, famous for never retreating in battle and for their unbreakable faith in their leader. Symbol of this devotion is the ring every single one of them wore, made to allow them to carry their heavy equipment. This ring was named after Havel the Rock, Lord Gwyn's old battlefield compatriot. Havel's men wore this ring to express faith in their leader and to carry a heavier load. From the aforementioned miracle and its weaker version, the magic barrier miracle sold by Rhea of the Way of White, we also learned that Havel was a sworn enemy of magical creatures, first and foremost Sif the Scaleless, who was not only a dragon, a magical being per se, but was also held responsible for the birth of sorcery and many horrifying atrocities. Havel's armor is made of solid rock, an element of nature which was therefore immune to magic, another element of nature of which the ancient dragons were the genuine personification. Then we have his dragon tooth, which was not only symbol of his victory over the dragons, but also added defense against magic given its origin. So considering his friendship and his devotion to Gwyn's cause, why did Havel end up in a cell? Well, together with his armor, in Anor Londo it was also possible to find Carbon and Mimic, an occult weapon, which is known to be very effective against the gods and their kin. I suppose at this point that Havel was either planning a rebellion against the gods or simply owning that weapon as a backup plan if things should go wrong. Still, the most likely reason why he was turning against his friend was that Gwyn not only gave unlimited freedom and power to Sif, who was creating terrifying and inhuman experiments, but was most probably also commissioning some of them. It's important to remember that years after the war with the dragons, the flame of power started to fade, and a consequential series of cataclysms hit Lordran, bringing Gwyn's society close to its fall. Therefore Gwyn, desperate to find a solution, also involved Sif. We know this because, together with Gwynevre's deformed handmaidens, we find in a cell the soul of a firekeeper. It's very likely that Sif was experimenting on her, thinking that she might bring a solution to the fading of the fire, which is a natural conclusion as also Vendrick and Olger created the Emerald Herald believing she was the answer to their problems. Therefore, going a step farther, it's also possible that thanks to Sif's discoveries, Gwyn was able at the end to link the fire to the Dark Soul, thus creating a cycle of life and death which would constantly bring new fuel to the flame, keeping it alive. It's no wonder that Havel was against all of this, being he himself a human and therefore destined to hollow eventually with the rise of the undead curse. It's at this point that Gwyn found out about Havel's conspiracy and imprisoned him, to spare his old friend from a heavier sentence. Key to the basement of the watchtower in the Undead Burg. The basement of the watchtower forms a stone cell. There are rumors of a hero turned hollow who was locked away by a dear friend, for his own good, of course. But Havel's warriors continued their leader's fight against magical creatures, and even after eons his legacy still stands. This ring was named after Havel the Rock, the battlefield compatriot of Gwyn, the First Lord. The art of war has been a constant since ages past, and those who would follow in Havel's footsteps are no fewer now than in his own day. That's most likely why we find multiple parts of his equipment scattered around Lothric, especially at Archdragon Peak where we find one of his warriors standing in front of a slain drake. I'm convinced that he's one of Havel's soldiers and not himself, because on one hand Havel was imprisoned and killed centuries ago in Lordran, while on the other his great shield, which was unique to Havel himself, says that it's a relic of the legendary Havel the Rock along with the dragon tooth. The shield is imbued with a special power reminiscent of Havel himself. therefore telling us that all that is left of the real Havel is his equipment, which is now treated as a relic of his legacy. Other than that, it's also possible to find his great magic berry miracle here, while, fun fact, the magic berry miracle is in Dark Souls 3 described as the reinterpretation of the first one, suggesting that his tale was passed on across many generations of Way of White clerics, eventually leading to the loss of some of its details in the form of lesser effectiveness of the miracle. Only those directly descending from his line of warriors still know the original content of Havel's miracle, thus allowing them to cast it in its most powerful form. Here are some other curiosities I found out. On the topic of why it is possible to get Havel's ring from the stray demon's soul, if you kill the Havel warrior at Edgedragon Peak, his armor will later spawn on the bridge close to the demon, therefore suggesting that a soldier was killed and his soul absorbed by it. While on the topic of why I didn't say anything about the Havel Knight found in Dark Souls 2, that's because that NPC is actually a grave robber and not one of Havel's warriors. I hope you found this mini lore video helpful and entertaining, so please let me know about your thoughts in the comments. I decided in this episode to give some more space also to older characters of the franchise, as some people seem to be uncertain about the identity of the Havel warrior at Edgedragon Peak. So don't worry, other main Dark Souls 3 videos are already in production and should be available as soon as they are ready. Still, I'm quite happy about this mini format, and I will probably create more future videos of the series about other forgotten or secondary characters of the past games, as thanks to Dark Souls 3, it seems that they have received again some attention by the community. Till then, I hope to see you in the next video. Have a nice day, guys.